Instead of actually allowing the body to do what it needed to do, we treat symptoms, we feel better, but we make our bodies more toxic as a result. In fact, I'm a little bit embarrassed to admit this to you, but it took me until about 10 years ago, it took 17 years working with clients to come to the realization that treating symptoms creates chronic disease. This is how we develop cancer and heart disease and these other diseases, because we're not allowing the body to detoxify on an ongoing basis. We're keeping it toxic. We're preventing it from ever functioning the way it was intended to. If throughout our lives, every time we had an acute crisis, a symptom, we simply listened to the body, which said, do you remember when you were a child, when you got sick, what did you not want to do? Eat. If we simply stopped eating, the body would have resolved each of these issues. Now, I can't remember who said, instead of medicine, Plutarch maybe, instead of medicine, fast for a day. In his age, that might have worked. One day might have been long enough.
In the handbook, yeah.
Not anymore. It's not long enough anymore for most of us. Right? Because we've allowed things to develop to a much greater extent. And so people are walking around with decades worth of old, hard waste in their digestive tract. Okay, is anyone not sure about this, the presence of this stuff? Because it's okay if you're not sure. Most of you have probably never seen it before. A study published in Denmark a few years ago said 5 to 10 kilos, that's 11 to 22 pounds for the gringos. That's typical. Okay, that's typical. 11 to 22 pounds of old hard stuff. And a lot of people think, no, that's not possible. So I was thinking about this 5 to 10 kilos, 11 to 22 pounds. How does that develop? Is that realistic? I mean, it's real because that's what they measured. And I see it here all the time. But how does it happen at all? Well, keep in mind that so every species has a digestive system specifically adapted for its particular diet. If you look at the digestive tract of a carnivore, right? Let's say this table is a 500-pound tiger, okay? The tiger, 500-pound tiger, has a digestive tract that's approximately 12 feet long. That's 5.5, no, I take it back, 12.5 feet. It's not even 4 meters, 3+ meters, okay? 500 pounds, 12 feet long. The average human digestive tract is 32 feet long, more than 2.5 times, nearly 3 times longer. Why? Because this animal eats a diet that's based on meat. And processing high protein through the body creates dozens of toxic byproducts. So this animal has a short, relatively short for its body length, smooth and relatively straight digestive tract so that it can eat and it can eliminate its waste within a few hours, extracting what it needs and eliminating the rest quickly. We're intended to consume things, low protein diets, okay? If you have any doubt about this, the science is now very clear. You eat more than a little bit of protein each day and you increase the speed at which you age and die. Okay, the more protein you eat, the shorter your telomeres get. Shorter telomeres you get, the shorter your lifespan. So this is real. This is what's happening. People today, look at the average North American getting 96+% of their calories from processed foods and animal products. What do these things have in common? How much water is in the average processed food you pick up at the drugstore, the gas station, the movie theater? Almost none. Yeah, it's a tiny percentage. But in order to move that material from here to the other end, nearly 10 meters away, there's got to be enough water and fiber to move that stuff through. Processed foods don't contain any water, and they hardly contain any fiber. Animal products contain no fiber at all and relatively little water. By the time this stuff is cooked, it's about 50% water. Animal products, about 50% water. You're still losing water. It's not moving through your system efficiently. So imagine, I just realized this like 2-3 weeks ago, I think during this session it occurred to me, what if every time you eat a meal, 1/10 of a gram of material gets stuck in the intestine? 1/10 of a gram. How much is that? What do you think that would look like if you were to look at it? How big is 1/10 of a gram of food? It's a tiny thing. You know, again, for the folks here from the U.S., there are 28 grams in an ounce. We're talking about 1/280th of an ounce. It's a tiny little piece, like a little crumb. Do you think it's reasonable that one crumb might get stuck with each meal? Stuff that's low water, low fiber? I think it's very reasonable, okay? The average person now eats 5 times a day. Something goes in their mouth 5 times a day. That's 0.5 gram per day. That's 182.5 grams per year. So it's almost 2 kilos in 10 years and 10 kilos in 50 years. So they said 5 to 10 kilos, 50 years, the average person at 1/10 of a gram per meal is going to have 10 kilos of old hard material in their system.
How many is that in pounds?
22 pounds. That's what the average body has got. Okay, that's what happens, and we're talking about accumulating this 1 crumb per meal, getting stuck. You can see how this happens. You can see how it's getting worse all the time. It's getting worse. As diets get worse, the problem becomes greater and greater. If this is toxic material and it's sitting in the colon, I would expect to see colon cancer, because cancer is where toxicity meets poor immune function. Those two things come together, you got cancer. Okay, what happens if you're eating toxic food and it's being stuck in the colon? Colon cancer. Anyone want to guess what the fastest growing form of cancer has been over the last 20 years or so? Colon cancer. No surprise. That's exactly what I'd expect to see. The question is, where does all this material accumulate? You know, if you talk to doctors who do colonoscopies, they say there's nothing in there. It says nothing in there. And I think it's entirely possible that they see nothing where something actually exists. And let me explain how that could happen. I don't have an easy way to show you this. Maybe I do. Let me see. So the colon is a tube. Okay, that's about the diameter of the colon. The small intestine, by the way, is 1/3 the diameter. This is why the colon, which is much shorter than the small intestine, is called the large intestine. It's got a much larger diameter, but it's a much smaller tube. So let's say, here's a piece of the colon. Okay, it's a little bigger the tube than it really is, but let's say there's a section of colon. Okay, and in order for this to function properly, to be able to assimilate what we need to through the semi-permeable membrane of the wall of the colon, you got a bunch of stuff in there. Maybe what happens is the body takes that and separates it off. So there's a pocket here that's separated off. Here's a pocket full of waste. And the body then does this. So now you have a tube and you've got waste, and they look inside, they don't see anything. That doesn't mean there's nothing there. This could be one of the reasons why people wind up with trouble, is because it's actually the actual functional diameter of the colon is narrowing over time. I wouldn't expect the stuff to get stuck in the colon. The colon is relatively large diameter, and in case you're not aware, it starts here, ileocecal valve, where the small intestine stops. This is where the large intestine starts. It comes up, it comes across the middle of the belly, it comes down, and it comes over to the anus. It's relatively straight. There are two 90-degree bends. It's relatively straight. Now, from the bottom of the stomach, which is about here, to the ileocecal valve, on my relatively long body, what is that, 12 inches, 30 centimeters, less? What is it? Is that about right?
30 centimeters.
Okay. In that 30 centimeters, I've got 20 plus feet of small intestines. What does that mean? It's all twists and turns, and it's a narrow diameter tube, 1/3 the diameter of the colon. That's where the stuff is likely to get stuck. Now, I don't have any evidence. I've never had any evidence of this until now. What's happened? What's happened is Stefan came back. Since Stefan's last visit, he was diagnosed with colon cancer. They removed his entire colon. He has an ileostomy. It's a bag. Small intestine empties into a bag which is worn on the outside of his belly, which means he can see what's coming out of the small intestine. And you know what he's seen over the last 42, 43 days he's been here? Every single day he's been here, there's material moving out of the small intestine. Every single day. which is, I've been saying for 20 years, this is where the old stuff's gonna be. Sure enough, it's coming out his every single day. Some days it doesn't look like it's real old stuff, it looks like it's brown. Some days it looks like it's black and hard. But every single day, it's stuff moving out. If he had a colon, it'd be going into the colon where it accumulates until we can eliminate it. When people feel impacted, it's in the colon. But that's not where the stuff's living all this time. It's in the small intestine. Okay, and I've now seen hard evidence for this. Okay? In 100% of the subjects we studied, it's only one person.
Yes, I'd like to know what's going on with the waste matter when we fast for 21, 26.
Yeah.
What's going on with it? Isn't it that leaking somewhere, or is this?
I hope not. We've got plastic sheets though if there's an issue.
What's like?
Yeah, so the question is, what's happening? If this stuff is sitting in your body this whole time, aren't you reabsorbing it into your bloodstream?
Yeah.
Yes, you are. But let's be clear about this. What happens for the average person is it sits there in the body forever, their entire life, causing them harm. And the only way you're going to get rid of it is to break it down and rehydrate it so your body can pass it through the normal channel. Or get yourself cut open and have it all cleaned out. It's not such a good idea. So if you go the natural route, there's really no other way to do it. But it's okay, because as you rehydrate it, yes, you'll begin to reabsorb a little bit into your bloodstream. That's why, those of you that have been here for weeks or already finished your fast, raise your hand if you've experienced some nausea, some cramps, some bloating. Okay, this happens primarily because you're rehydrating this nasty old stuff and reabsorbing stuff into your bloodstream. But that's okay. What your body is doing 60 times per day is filtering all of your blood. 60 times per day. It's being run through the kidneys, and all that garbage that you've reabsorbed from the colon is filtered out into the urinary tract. Okay, so you're getting rid of the stuff that way, and because you're breaking it down and hydrating, you're going to be able to eliminate it. So, yeah, there might be some unpleasant symptoms while this is happening, but it's necessary, or it's never going to leave your body. And the toxins don't build up in the body. They're actually being eliminated. Okay, while the stuff is sitting there, you're always reabsorbing a little bit. It's always making it toxic. It's preventing you from absorbing nutrients you need to absorb. It's causing all kinds of issues. Anyone here ever have an inguinal hernia? When I was 5 years old, I was diagnosed with an inguinal hernia. There was a bulge in my groin. They cut me open. What happens is there's an opening in the bone, in the groin, where the artery and nerves pass through. An inguinal hernia is where the intestine pushes through that opening. You can see it bulging in the lower belly. Okay? So think about this. If the intestine's pushing through the opening where the nerves and the blood, nerves and blood are going, isn't it possible that with enough pressure, they would somehow negatively impact the flow through the artery and the nerve vessels? This is what I believe is happening for a lot of people. I believe this is one of the primary factors with multiple sclerosis. We've worked with about 12, 15 people with MS. Most of them were suffering primarily in their lower body. Okay, I believe it's old material. I think there's a lot of places where this shows up. Maximize your benefit. It's the single most powerful and beneficial thing you can do for yourself, what you're doing right now. Okay? I feel very grateful to be able to be here with such amazing people, because most people aren't willing to take responsibility, aren't willing to invest in themselves and take the time. But it can be challenging. It is challenging for many people, okay? If not physically, emotionally, mentally. It could be challenging. There's not a single person here that can't do this. You can all do it, okay? I know you can create anything you choose to. And if you want to feel and function better than you ever have, you're in the right place. But you're going to have to be willing to go through something that's going to be difficult. And the truth is that when you're done, if you want to continue feeling and functioning as well as possible, you're going to need to be willing to make different choices. Because it was your choices that brought you to this point in the first place. But I'm just going to invite you to be open to hearing what I have to share with you, because my only interest is in seeing you leave here feeling and functioning better than ever. This is an investment in the rest of your life. And I don't want you to, for a second, to minimize how powerful this can be, because this can change everything. There's no way to put a value on your health, right? And what you guys can create, it's amazing.